é uma jornalista premiada, colunista do jornal O Globo, da Rádio CBN, e é comentarista de economia do Estúdio I e do telejornal Edição das 18, no canal Globo News. Também apresenta o programa Entrevista do canal Futura. Flavia Oliveira. Ela é atriz-MC, diretora, pesquisadora e slammer, uma das fundadoras do Núcleo Bartolomeu de Depoimentos e do coletivo transdisciplinar Frente 3 de Fevereiro. Autora do livro Teatro Hip Hop, a performance poética do ator MC, e juntamente com Tatiana Lohmann, dirigiu o documentário Slam, Voz do Levante, Roberta Estrela D'alva. E a grande convidada da noite, né, Patricia Hill Collins, é professora emérita do Departamento de Sociologia da Universidade de Maryland, College Park. Foi a primeira presidenta negra da Associação Americana de Sociologia e publicou diversos livros, entre os quais Fighting Words, Black Women, The Search for Justice, de 98, On Intellectual Activism, de 2013, Intersectionality as Critical Social Theory, de 2019, e Concerman Bid Intersectionality, 2016. Está lançando aqui no Brasil o primeiro livro dela em português, Pensamento Feminista Negro. Está à venda ali, depois ela vai assinar, se eu fosse vocês, não perderiam a oportunidade. Patricia Hill Collins. Uau, começamos bem. Para a gente começar aqui, gostaria de fazer uma pergunta para a Patrícia, a partir de uma fala dela que está no prólogo deste livro, né? Ela disse que escrever um livro que queria que a minha mãe tivesse lido. A gente pode falar de um feminismo intergeracional? E se sim, como é que isso é trabalhado na tua obra? E como é que isso é pensado para você hoje em dia? Como é que a gente fala, ao mesmo tempo, com as gerações anteriores e essas gerações que estão chegando agora? Boa noite, Patrícia. Muito obrigada. É um prazer ter você aqui.
Thank you. Obrigada. I start off by telling people, wait a minute, hold it. I don't need to hear the Portuguese. I always start off by telling people that I was not meant to be here. I was not meant to be the one who actually got to go to school, who was able to graduate, who was able to learn to read and write, and who was able to travel great distances to get to this particular stage. My mother was amazing. She was very smart, but she did not have the opportunities that I have. And because she did not have the opportunities, like many Black women, she turned inward. She didn't get angry, but she was very sad. And there are many Black women who carry the burdens every day of their families and of their communities, and their talent is never recognized. And their talent has not necessarily risen to the level of intellectual work. So we tend to think they're not there. I thought, what would a book be like that would have made my mother better able to live her life? And I felt that it was my obligation as the younger generation at that point. That obviously is no longer the case. But at that point, to take my education, which was mine, but was ours at the same time, across the generation. When I started working on Black feminist thought, there was very little work like what I was trying to do. There was plenty of work on what Black women did wrong, but very little on what Black women were doing from their point of view. The more I worked on that book, the more I realized that there was a bigger story than my neighborhood, my family, my block, that my individual experiences were tied to those of African American women in the US. And the more I worked, and the longer I've been working in this field, I have come to see that there are Black women globally who face very similar challenges and who need very similar kinds of work. It's not the same struggle. The struggle in the US is particular to the US. It is heterogeneous within the US. But the struggle in Brazil, where I'm assuming, like Carolina Maria de Jesus, if I say it correctly, that turned out to be the first book I've ever read by a Black woman in Brazil. And I was surprised by the similarities, but also the differences. So to me, this kind of work on Black feminism is not done, it's just begun. And I see my book as one contribution to that broader project.
Flávia?
Boa noite a todas as pessoas aqui, mais uma noite feliz de encontro com a Flup. Uma honra estar com essas duas queridas amigas e com Dona Patrícia. Professor, eu quero continuar, vou continuar nessa trilha que a Ana iniciou, pensando na relação aí entre mulheres negras. A senhora traz no livro uma reflexão sobre uma certa união das mulheres negras da classe trabalhadora a partir de um ponto de partida comum, né, de exclusão, de falta de oportunidades. E lança uma reflexão em relação ao papel das mulheres negras que ascendem à classe média, como elas passam a se relacionar com as outras mulheres negras e em que medida as velhas estruturas de opressão podem se repetir na relação entre mulheres negras. Eu queria saber, ao longo dessa trajetória, desse intervalo entre a primeira edição do livro e a escrita no Brasil, o que a senhora observou em relação à relação entre mulheres negras que ascenderam e as mulheres negras ainda na base da pirâmide. Acho que é uma reflexão importante para nós, mulheres negras brasileiras, que estamos talvez atravessando uma primeira etapa, né, de uma geração, e aqui temos 3 exemplos, de mulheres negras que chegaram à classe média, concluíram a universidade e ganharam projeção. O que a senhora nos diria em relação a essa relação com as nossas irmãs? Obrigada.
I think it's really important to keep in mind that existing power structures want to use us as examples of how racism and sexism and class exploitation and homophobia are gone. They will use our images, they will use our words, they will use our work. And they attempt to convince us that we are individuals that have achieved success without help from anyone else. Or if we have achieved success, it was because our families, very small units, were somehow special or different or did the right things. So there is tremendous pressure on those who have achieved to forget those who've been left behind and to be used as the face of success. It's a new issue in the US because historically there has not been a big Black middle class. And historically, the black middle class in the US thought of themselves as race men and race women. They knew that they had to do things for the race, for black people, because their fate was tied to those black people. In the last 30 years, as the structures have changed in the United States about race and racism, we need a new discourse on this to point out these particular changes. The black women at the bottom and the black men at the bottom and people on the bottom in general, which in the US is very much inflected through race and class, are still there. But they can easily be erased in public space because of us. If we're thinking about Michelle Obama, yay. If we're thinking about Barack Obama, yay. If we're thinking about Beyonce, let's imagine how much money she has. She can come into the Super Bowl and command a presence. So the argument is, what's the problem? Why are you middle-class black people talking about racism and sexism? You are creating the problem by talking about it. It's a really interesting period of time that we're in. I think if you go the other direction and you look at people who are, particularly young people, who are going to schools that are underfunded, where they cannot get reproductive health services when they need them, who are living in communities where there are guns so prevalent that it's like living in a war zone, and we could think about post-traumatic stress syndrome for many youth who have witnessed their friends and loved ones die. If we look at that, that is a very different perspective on class than if we only said, do what I do to be successful. You can make it too. That's the standard thing. And of course they could make it if there were opportunities to do so. The talent is definitely there. So I think we're entering into a phase of power relations, both in the US and globally, that masks the workings of power. It hides it in plain sight and makes really important use of media and cultural sites in that process of keeping power intact. Are you all following this? I'm trying to speak in measured ways, because once I get started, I can't stop. I'll be blah, blah, blah. I will be Brazilian. So I'm doing this for you. I'm on my best behavior.
We don't want you to stop, please, go on. Roberta?
Salve, salve, boa noite, todos e todas. Patrícia, tem uma palavra, né, um conceito, na verdade, que é o empoderamento, né, do qual a senhora fala muito aqui no livro, que está muito em voga, né, é uma palavra, é um conceito muito usado, sobretudo entre as mulheres negras jovens. E na última vez que nós nos encontramos em São Paulo, junto numa mesa que a Djamila estava mediando, eu levantei a mão no final e fiz uma pergunta para a senhora, que era, entendendo que empoderamento significa muitas frentes de libertação, né, e de se ter um poder, de se saber quem é, de um lado, tem um outro lado que é poder. Dentro da sociedade capitalista, necessariamente significa uma relação de opressão. Eu perguntei à senhora assim, como lidar com isso? Né? A gente não tem como falar de empoderamento sem discutir capitalismo. E a senhora me disse, eu vou pensar nisso e a próxima vez que a gente se encontrar, conversamos, e a gente se encontrou. Ela não sabia que ia ser tão cedo. E daí depois, aí veio o livro, é bom, né? Porque esse livro chegou agora, e aí eu li algumas coisas que escureceram, clarearam, que eu avancei também na minha pergunta. E uma das coisas que está escrita aqui é repensar o feminismo negro como projeto de justiça social implica desenvolver uma noção complexa de empoderamento. Então, eu queria que a senhora nos falasse sobre essa noção complexa de empoderamento. Acho que vai ser muito útil para todas e todos nós?
I think black women as a group are not going to be empowered if I get a new handbag. That's it. So if I'm empowered individually, if I feel that sense of empowerment, that's a good thing. But it can't rest on things. It can't rest on consumer capitalism. So to me, what is really different now is that I'm going to walk this back just 1 second. Hold it. Let me just back up. I want to start in another place. Empowerment, as I discuss this in this book, and I think as it has been the case historically, has been a collective empowerment. It was very clear that there would be no social justice for any one individual without social justice for the group. So it would be difficult to envision a politics that was just the politics of an accumulation of individuals, each going their own way, doing their own thing, empowering their own selves. A collective empowerment is about group-based treatment and group-based resistance. So that is one thing that is fundamental in this book that I'd like to stress. But what's interesting about the last 20 to 30 years has been the growth of a neoliberal philosophy that is dedicated to doing away with group-based anything by convincing us that the groups that we belong to are our problem. So if I were a black person and I'm stuck with all those other black people, the solution is for me to leave them behind and be the best individual I can be. But it's even more insidious than this, because once you separate people from their communities and you tell them, if you buy certain things, if you wear certain things, if you empower yourself individually, that's enough. We can just add all that together and black women will be empowered. Now, I happen to think that particular philosophy is transferring money and resources out from black communities and away from black people. I mean, do we really need all those gym shoes? What's that all about? Do we really need to consume as much as we consume? Do we need to aspire to those things when there's so many other things in the world that are in fact free to us and open to us? One of them is art and hip hop and culture and spoken word and poetry and music. So why would we turn our backs on that in favor of stuff? And particularly stuff that is sold to us as something that will empower us. We then become an ad for somebody else's agenda. Am I getting closer? I said, oh, I'm worried. She has a very high bar. I want to make sure I get over it, or at least run up to it.
Eu gostaria de pedir para a senhora retornar um pouquinho a algo que foi dito brevemente em uma das respostas, né? Assim, eu sou apaixonada pelo livro da Joy DeGruy, né, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, né? E eu acho que ou seja, essa herança, né, dos países que ficaram nos países que foram tocados pela escravidão, né, ela ainda afeta muito ainda, principalmente os povos diaspóricos, né, os negros da diáspora, né? E eu acho que esse é um conceito novo que se tem aqui no Brasil, pelo menos eu não tenho visto falar muito dessa síndrome pós-traumática da escravidão. A senhora poderia falar um pouquinho mais para a gente como isso afeta a sociedade hoje em dia ainda?
I think we're coming to a recognition of the intergenerational effects of violence. Violence that is targeted toward black people and black women, the particular forms that take, and beginning to recognize that our understanding of violence cannot be individualistic. It really is something that is social and structured and institutional. So that there is a connection between domestic violence and state-sanctioned violence of militarism and police killings, as the Black Lives Matter movement has taught us, and all of the constellation of hate crimes against gays and lesbians, all of the constellation of violent acts that we've been encouraged to see as individual bad luck, perhaps, are in fact interconnected. More to the point that there are significant effects if you have violence structured into your society and into your everyday life. I am particularly concerned, or what I come at this, looking at children in war zones and the kinds of things that children in war zones witness and experience. Child soldiers would be wonderful parallels between young people in Central America who are being recruited or pushed into gang warfare for their own lives, for their own safety. But what tends to happen in democracies like the US is that that is not seen as structural violence. Even though the effects of structural violence are pretty obvious, when you witness, the whole notion of witnessing something happening and worrying about violence that might be random, as you would do if you're a child. Children do not think about things the way we do, is a form of stress that is similar to living in a war zone. Now, to recognize that and to say, we have to become much better advocates for our children. I mean, I know people already do so many things because this is such a tough issue. But for it to be a collective issue around safety, security, and protection, and that be one of the first things that has to be provided for children, all children, but especially for Black children, and especially for Black girls, that has been high on the list of a Black feminist agenda. But it's often not recognized as such because the way feminism is reported in the media usually says that feminism is all about women advocating for their own issues and not those of anyone else. Where I see Black feminism as rooted in this sense of empowering a community for social justice, being collective, and looking to protecting one's community as essential to one's politics. So if you cannot, if you're off shopping thinking you're being empowered as an individual in a mall, how on earth can you be involved in empowerment that is Black feminist when we're facing these types of issues?
Vou continuar aí nessa ação essa menção ao feminismo negro e seu papel comunitário. Vou lembrar que na entrevista que a senhora deu aqui recentemente, ao chegar no Brasil, à agência pública, a senhora mencionou que as mulheres negras vivem uma visibilidade inédita do ponto de vista midiático nas redes sociais, mas que a gente não deveria, aí até já me incluindo, né? Falei a gente, que essa representação na mídia não substitui a representação política. É preciso, então, trilhar esse caminho de aumentar a representatividade ou a proporcionalidade na política. Eu queria que a senhora falasse um pouco sobre essa dimensão da representação política, da presença das mulheres negras na política, pensando numa estrutura político-partidária ainda dominada pelos homens brancos, a esquerda e a direita, ou a direita e a esquerda, os homens brancos ainda estão no controle dos partidos, e em que medida é possível avançar em termos de direito, mesmo atuando politicamente nas frestas, posto que a gente vive um momento de conservadorismo crescente na América e também no Brasil.
I think what I would first do is frame what you said a tad differently at the beginning. I don't think that people in the media and people in politics are opposed. I actually think we really need both at this particular moment. But what we need are people who are strategic and who see the broader agenda wherever they are placed. And I would include community leaders there. I would include a long list of people. And it's a question of, for me, of specializing in different forms of resistance. If you see working in the media as a site of resistance against these power relations, you specialize in that. And you rise to the level that you can, you do what you can there. All the people who are filmmakers, that kind of thing. If you specialize in politics, that is really a hard road, because that's one where there's a lot of victory and a lot of failure and a lot of blockage. But even there, thinking more robustly about the political system and what is possible under certain laws and what is not. And the level of politics. I happen to think local politics are very important, as are national politics. But if we only have political discussions about national politics, one could easily become very disenchanted right now and depressed and think, this is very difficult. And it is. But that might squeeze out seeing other opportunities and other places where Black women are. Black women are everywhere there. Sometimes you're holding office, sometimes you're not. Black women are working on campaigns of people. They are working aggressively in the US, particularly around voter rights. We are facing in the US a concerted effort to disenfranchise Black and Latino voters. Because if you can't win outright on your ideas, then you can massage the system and change the rules. Very interesting case in Florida. People coming out of prison because felon disenfranchisement is really the outcome of mass incarceration. That's one factor there. And the voters of Florida voted to have felons get their voting back. And a lot of those people are Black men and Black women, but Black men in particular. So the political sphere, the level of analysis, the cultural stuff that journalists do. I mean, I would never underestimate journalism. I think it's quite difficult. I can't do it, but I want to see people I like do it. That's my perspective. But the Black women in politics really have an uphill battle, right? But that's what's new about this. This is not new, none of this. So the issue is back to the original intergenerational struggle, the question of that, and picking our terrains carefully. My work is in the academy by design. I didn't just end up there because I couldn't do other things. I see any place where ideas are created and produced as crucial. And I want to be the one who sets the intellectual agenda, not the one who's responding to someone else's. And the only way to do that, well, thank you. The only way to do that is to enter the institutions and capture positions once you get there, all right? So along with building parallel institutions that are not necessarily trying to go into government or into the academy or into the corporate world, for example, which we don't talk enough about. But independent institutions are quite significant as well.
Thank you. Berta?
Bom, acho que eu vou colocar aqui não é nem uma pergunta exatamente, mas como a gente estava falando lá em cima, como pensar junto isso, que é a questão do que é gerado, né, por meio do racismo, o ódio, o desejo de vingança, a dor, o trauma, isso tudo que a gente vê, e eu converso muito com as pessoas, o que fazer com isso. E estava me lembrando de um texto da Audre Lorde, que ela fala que ela tá no supermercado, ela conta, né, que tem uma mulher branca com uma menina, e chega uma mulher negra com uma menina no colo, e a menina branca, muito excitada, vê essa mulher negra com um bebê no colo e fala: mamãe, olha, uma empregada bebê. E ela fala assim, essa é uma pessoa que está doente, e isso gera para uma mãe, uma dor, um ódio para uma criança, essas violências que as pessoas vão sofrendo, geram um ódio, um desejo de vingança muito grande. Eu me lembro na África do Sul, quando eu via o arquiteto do apartheid, esqueci o nome da criatura, lá quando ele sofre um atentado e toma um tiro, quando eu vi, eu tava, sei lá, 10 minutos na frente de um vídeo em looping, olhando e falando, morre, ele toma um tiro e começa a cuspir sangue pelo olho, pelo nariz, e eu tava ali, assim, hipnotizada, falava, você tá tendo o que você merece, e eu levei a questão, eu falei assim, o que fazer com isso? Né? Como é que a senhora tem conversado sobre isso, esse trauma, esse ódio? É uma coisa real. Como é que a gente vai superar ou transformar, pensando junto, não é nenhuma pergunta, falasse um pouco sobre esse assunto, nos ajudasse a pensar isso.
But I think it lies at the heart of how we raise our children. Because you see, everybody, when we're born, we're innocent and we're not hating anything. And one of the biggest challenges, I think, if you're the mother or the parent of a black child in the societies where we live, is how do we keep them with a sense of beauty about themselves and love of themselves, and prepare them to go into a society that hates them and that often will want to kill them. Because you see, if you err too much on the side of preparation, you shut down their imagination, their creativity very often, and make them fearful. And this would be the kid that just says, there's racism everywhere, I'll never be anything, I believe what they're saying. I mean, we have to equip them to push back against that hate without becoming haters themselves. I think this is a difficult thing for men in particular, in terms of all those wonderful young men out there who are just sweet as they can be. They're soft, they're loving, they're caring, they're wonderful little boys. But they are pressured to become a different kind of man that replicates the worst of white masculinity. And our girls are encouraged to be strong to the point where they're not supposed to be vulnerable either. So we have to find a way to create a space for beauty in the lives of our children. And it starts young. So I will tell my own little story here for a minute. I'm not Audre Lorde, but I'll tell the story of my daughter and her cookie, all right? This is the time when I was flying with my daughter. She was about 2 years old. She was a bebé, 2 años. And we were in the economy class, and there was the business class or the first class in front of us. And to this day, you do not see a lot of black people flying in business class. And this was quite some time ago, so everybody there was white. And we're back here in the first row. And this little boy came out of first class. He was about 2 as well. I remember him as being blonde, but he didn't necessarily have to be blonde, but I tend to remember him that way. And he took one look at my daughter and her cookie, and he took it and left. He just took her cookie. Now, and she was puzzled because she would have been willing to share her cookie with him, but both of us were shocked at I feel, the audacity of a stranger to come and take your stuff out of your own hand, not even in your own cabin of service. Well, this got me started. How do I prepare my daughter to be the sharing, the giving child that she was, and at the same time be assertive enough to say, get your hands off my damn cookie. Are you following this? So this is the dilemma. We don't want to replicate the ugly in the society, that we have inherited among ourselves. But we have to find a way to challenge that ugly every single day, individually and through institutions that we build and how we take on those institutions.
Eu queria pegar o gancho um pouco nessa pergunta da Roberta e na resposta. Eu sempre me lembro muito acho que é Patricia Hill, The Erotic Life of Racism, um livro, ela, no início do livro, ela fala talvez um pouco sobre essa questão que ela gostaria que as pessoas brancas tomassem mais responsabilidade pelos teus atos, né? No sentido de ela conta uma história em que ela estava com uma filha de uma amiga adolescente, né? E depois de um determinado acontecido, uma senhora branca chega, ela faz alguma coisa, né? Não, desculpa, deixa eu voltar. Essa senhora estava esperando que ela tivesse um determinado comportamento, ela tem outro, né, que decepciona essa senhora. A senhora vira para ela e diz, né, e pensar que eu marchei por vocês, né? E ela diz que estava com a filha dessa amiga adolescente, né? E fala, eu não posso não fazer nada, né? Essa garota que está comigo agora vai enfrentar muitas situações iguais a esta. Então eu vou ter que dar uma resposta. E ela disse que vira para essa senhora e disse, se a senhora não entendeu até hoje que marchou por você e não por nós, né, e não por mim, né, eu não posso fazer nada, né? E talvez o que falta é exatamente assumir essa responsabilidade. Eu digo não necessariamente por um passado histórico, né, mas pelo que o privilégio branco numa sociedade racista, né, ainda dá condições para que uma senhora branca acha que ela deve esperar algo de alguém só porque lá no passado ajudou a lutar pelos direitos civis que beneficiariam toda uma sociedade, né? Talvez seja isso, né? Falta essa empatia, essa delicadeza, né? Como é que a gente reage a essas pessoas que estão sempre esperando algo da gente só porque acreditam que lutaram por um preconceito, seja racial, seja de gênero, de classe, né? Existe uma resposta, Patrícia?
Okay, all I can do is talk about my perspective on this. And quite frankly, it is exhausting to attempt to deal with white privilege. And everything that I do where I don't have to deal with it and teach people, that's where I go, away from that. Someone has to do that work. And I respect the people who do that work, but I don't have the temperament for that. This is what I talked about earlier. You have to specialize in what you're good at and avoid the things you're not good at, if you can do that. I've just never been good at that. So for me, it's a question of building a toolkit of responses to those kinds of assaults. Microaggressions is what they're called. I don't even hear that stuff. I'm looking at, the whole notion that somebody asks you something doesn't mean you have to respond. I'm responding to you all because I love you all. That's why I'm having this conversation, as I do you. We don't have enough resources to take that on. To me, the issue is to develop a clear sense of what you're trying to accomplish and go after it. And because sometimes you do run into people, if I don't care if she's transformed while she's marching, that's her issue. What I care about is that she got out there and marched, whatever her reasons were. So looking for the institutional changes that you want in the institutions where you are situated, to me, is being clear about that. And I've worked in the academy for decades. And it's very different in a lot of ways than it used to be. It's very much the same still. But it is different in terms of things you cannot get away with in the academy anymore. And it can regress. But what we were quite clear about was capturing positions in the academy more students, more black students, more black faculty, more black administrators. More is better. It's always 2 is better than 1, always. 4 is better than 2. 10 is better than 5. Now, you do hit a tipping point where people say there are too many. It must not be good anymore because there are too many black people all sitting together in the cafeteria. Oh! But if you don't care about that necessarily, unless it gets in the way of delivering what needs to be delivered to youth, if we put youth in the middle of everything we did, it would be so clear to people. The other piece is the personal affronts. I mean, I have a whole series of strategies that I've developed over the years to deal with the ridiculous things that people say to me about myself, right? And one thing I will not put up with is to be disrespected unless I have to put up with it. You don't want to go willingly to a place of subordination and then complain about your own attitude and your own behavior when you did it to yourself. An analysis helps with that tremendously. Sometimes I've had to be silent and just let that one go. I lost that one. Okay. But I'll win the next one. And what did I learn from this particular conversation with this particular person? I cannot tell you how many white people have said to me, "You are so articulate." Oh, you're so articulate, Patricia. And by this they mean I'm like all the other black people. So rather than me, every time they say that, just like that's my trigger, oh, don't call me articulate, don't do it again. I mean, I just say, interesting, because I'm going to use that perception of being articulate, which I am. I do not need to be told that. I will use that perception in order to write something with my articulate self and get it published. Can you hold that book up? Hold the book up. Thus, a little backstory on the nature of the work that we do. And that's what I do. But everybody does something different, you know, that we're good at, that we want to do, that if you're going to be a hip-hop poet, be the best one you can be and give it to people, you know? So that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Flávia?
Eu queria continuar. Acho que falamos bastante sobre white people, brancos e pretos, e eu queria lhe ouvir sobre as relações entre homens e mulheres negras, homens negros e mulheres negras. Há tensões, né, também de natureza afetiva, né? A gente tem no Brasil um debate muito intenso sobre a solidão da mulher negra, sobre quanto mulheres negras são preteridas, né, em relação a mulheres brancas. E há uma tensão, por exemplo, na assimetria dos afazeres domésticos e de cuidados com pessoas, que a senhora até traz no livro também, mencionando a sobrecarga, né, em alguma medida, e que aqui, e acredito que nos Estados Unidos também, traz uma assimetria de acesso ao mercado de trabalho. As mulheres acabam tendo menos tempo disponível para o mercado de trabalho, e, portanto, para a renda, e, portanto, para a qualidade de vida e para o bem-estar dessas famílias. Juntando essa salada inteira, como é que a gente vai conseguir se entender com o homem negro, tendo nossas agendas, nossas perspectivas de inserção, né, quase todas coletivas, não dizem respeito às mulheres, e eu concordo, faço coro com a senhora, mas como é que precisam se dar as relações entre a negritude, homem e mulher?
I think we have to start in a place of recognizing that the damage that's been done to us, I mean, the harm that we face, does not harm us in the same way. And this is where gender is really important. The example of violence that I talked about earlier. If we had a political agenda against violence that just looked at men, clearly this would not be enough. What we have to do is something quite basic. One person's freedom cannot be based on another person's subordination. Now, we're used to thinking about that in terms of race. So we get an anti-racism agenda saying black freedom can never happen as long as there is white privilege. We see that. But when it comes to looking at relationships between black men and black women, the challenge is for black men to see that they will never be free unless black women are free with them. Now that's a statement of where you want to go. The next step, at least where I want to go, and the next step is the diagnosis of where are we now and how do we get there? How do we get somewhere different? I see black feminism as a discourse and a politics that is not anti-men at all. I think this is very much coming from mainstream perspectives of what feminism is and what black feminism is. If you are for the empowerment of black women, that can only help all black people. That's the way to begin to look at this. Because black women have experienced something called the intersection of racism and sexism and class exploitation and heterosexism. Black women have been earlier, seeing these connections, recognizing them in their own lives, and working aggressively to deal with those issues. If you notice that only the jobs that you get are just in domestic work, or that your children can't get good health care, you're first in line. Or if someone is you're experiencing sexual violence in ways that other groups aren't, you're first in line to really deal with those issues. That has been threatening to many black men who buy into a notion of black masculinity as one of dominance and see anything that has to do with strength, as you describe, symmetry or complementarity, as being the problem. They assume someone always has to be in charge, and it should be them. So black men actually need black feminism. And a black feminism that develops another view of black masculinity in the same way that black feminism and black women have been aggressively, assertively over time, developing an alternative perspective on black womanhood. It's not a question of one is antithetical to the other. It's a question of black men coming to say, what is it about masculinity in general? White masculinity, that's the race-class intersection. What is it about white men and how they view sexuality? That would be those systems that privilege white men. What are we doing to ourselves and to those whom we love if we mimic that? Now, I have another book that I have written on this. But it is not, well, I have to rework it because I wrote it so long ago, but it's called Black Sexual Politics. And it basically argues for this perspective of masculinity and femininity and redefining both black masculinity and black femininity at the same time as a collaborative project. But I couldn't have written that book without the work of black men beginning to be very brave about challenging other black men and this perception of masculinity. This is not necessarily a woman's struggle to lead, but it has to be led by black men. Many of them were black gay men. That's where we really got good analysis about masculinity. That was about racism, class, sexuality, and something I'm missing, gender, obviously. So I think this is part of the project. Now, for your ordinary black woman, dealing with your ordinary black man. It's going to sound a little basic, what I'm going to say now. You have to leave the brothers alone who are not ready, all right? And recognize that there are everybody out here is trying to do better, many people. So you will never hear me say anything negative about black men as a group. I think black men as a group and black women as a group both need to do self-reflection about thinking about masculinity and femininity and build new relationships as a result of that.
Roberta.
Bom, voltando um pouco para o livro, né, Pensamento Feminista Negro, que agora está traduzido, é muito bom, e a gente, né, quer que os livros sejam traduzidos, porque isso apoia bastante a luta, as conversas, dá subsídio, tomara que os livros sejam traduzidos, todos eles, assim como os da Angela Davis também estão sendo traduzidos agora, né, um grande material para a gente discutir. É muito legal. Eu sou das pessoas que pegam o livro e vai atrás ver a bibliografia. E é muito legal, é uma alegria ver que tem Carneiro, Sueli Carneiro, né, uma pensadora brasileira, e tem uma citação na abertura do capítulo 12 por uma política de empoderamento. Então eu queria saber da senhora sobre a sua relação com a Sueli Carneiro, com a obra, com ela, e o que a senhora aprende com ela sobre o feminismo negro brasileiro, né? Que, embora tenha pontos de contato com o americano, tem também suas diferenças, encontros e desencontros e tudo mais.
I wish I knew more. That's the first thing that I would say. But I can talk a little bit about, because I'm still a student. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't come to you as an expert on Brazil. You're the experts on Brazil. So I come with questions and I come with perceptions, but I don't come as the imperial American scholar. And you've had enough of those. You don't need another one, like me, all right? So I think what I would say here is that when I first, okay, that just got translated. All right, good. Okay. I think for me, the issue is coming across, here's the thing, let me just take a step. I think you have to realize the limits of English. And English is just big, and I say limitations. I don't mean the doors that it opens. I mean the intellectual limitations of working in English. I was working in an African American studies department. I certainly knew Brazil was there, but we were under the influence of the term the Black Atlantic, which was a triangle from Britain to Africa to North America and certain colonies in the Caribbean. With hindsight, it is amazing to me that Brazil was not part of the triangle, but then it wouldn't be a triangle, would it? It would be a different shape entirely. So the whole notion of learning to look for what's not there with your assumptions, particularly if you're struggling to get Black people and Black women visible, it's a process. Now that's the context in which someone sent me material on Sueli and the struggle here. And I realized that the Black women's struggle here was very similar to, I said, that sounds a lot like Black women in the US. That was my first thought. Amazing. And they have a Black women's movement. How old is that movement? My gosh, it's really old. Why don't we know about this? It's the English. This is why I'm so thrilled this book is translated. But I want your stuff translated into English, right? So I can read it. But what really stood out for me as the differences was, one, the effects of the Black movement. The Black movements here very much were, my sense is, trying to bring Blackness into being in response to the racial democracy. And when you are in a struggle like that, it can be very difficult to break ranks and talk about things like gender because the racial struggle is seen as so overwhelming. So I think there was a similar situation in the US, confronting a different structure of racism. Where here, the struggle, my sense, has been to bring blackness into being as a political blackness. In the US, it was hardwired from slavery in terms of segregation. It was very clear. Racism was extremely clear. But both of those movements, somehow the Black movement in the US and here, empowered everybody except women said, but it's not empowering us enough. So from both of those movements, to me, come visible, independent Black feminist activism, which had always been there within the context of Black communities in the US. And I cannot speak to what happened in Brazil, but I have some very good guesses based on the traces that are here. This tradition of Colombo, all of that, this sort of, if I'm saying it correctly, but the whole notion of you have different things to work with here culturally in terms of Blackness. So now, to me, the issues are very similar. It's a parallel struggle. We can talk about gender violence. We can talk about relationships between men and women. We can talk about jobs. We can talk about education. We can talk about health, housing. All of that's very similar. But it's coming from a different history and political structure. So I like to think about the Black women's movement in Brazil, and I think right now, as it's very exciting. I think this is a very important time, a time of visibility, a time of voice, and I think it's a time when others are looking to you because you're going to lead and are leading, I think.
Patrícia, eu gostaria que a senhora pudesse falar um pouquinho mais para a gente, a partir do nome do termo, né, e do nome do livro que foi citado, Why are all the Black kids sitting together in the cafeteria? É o livro, acho que de uma socióloga americana, Beverly Tanton. Beverly... Not... Okay.
Oh, I didn't hear you speaking English. Oh.
Ou seja, esse livro, para mim, pelo menos, ele foi importante para eu começar a pensar, né, na questão do ataque que estão sofrendo os grupos minoritários, né? Principalmente aqui no Brasil, nos Estados Unidos também, mas aqui no Brasil agora também a gente tem visto, eu acho que principalmente homens brancos, héteros de esquerda, indo para a mídia e para as redes sociais e até escrevendo livro contra grupos minoritários, né, associando-os à ascensão da extrema-direita, né, principalmente politicamente, né. A senhora poderia falar um pouco para a gente sobre isso, a importância para o grupo, né? Porque eles estão ali se sentindo incomodados, né? Por um posicionamento que eu acho que a gente está tendo, né? Se a senhora pudesse falar para a gente um pouco sobre isso, a importância de we sit together in the cafeteria.
I think there's a great threat. Whenever a powerful group recognizes a less powerful group as being organized and talking only to each other, that is threatening. And it's differently threatening depending on whether you're the white left who really feels you've been doing the right thing for all those downtrodden Black people, or whether you're the far right that's just scared to death if all those downtrodden Black people get together and talk to each other. Now, this would not have been so much of an issue in the past when all those downtrodden Black people were out of sight, out of mind. But when we're in a period of now, when in the US, social institutions are integrated, you have Black students actually in white spaces who want to talk to each other and who's about things they want to talk about and who do not feel that their job is to desegregate the institution and teach white people about privilege. They do not see themselves as being the multicultural experience for teaching white people. They're there for other reasons. Therefore, when they sit in the cafeteria together and talk together, and this is the metaphor for separate organizing, right? separate organizing, and doing it unapologetically. This is what I like about Black youth in the U.S. now. Unapologetically Black. All right? That doesn't mean they hate white people. It may mean that. It may not mean that. But what frustrates people is not knowing what's going on in those groups, you see. So when you chain that together, well, let me just say one tiny little example about this. When I was teaching a class on, what's I teaching? Black sexual politics, I think. And I had this group of graduate students, white women and some black women, and we were all in there together, and everybody expected they would be talking together about it. I took 1 week, and I divided them up into groups, and I had an all-black group. Everyone was shocked. I put all the black students in one group. There's only 4 of them. It wasn't a big group, but I felt they were entitled to talk to the other 3 once in a while in my class, all right? And the other groups that I put, which were all white, were very upset by this. They were, what are they talking about? And the black women were going, blah, 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 blah. They were having this amazing conversation with one another. And the white students felt really left out. So the whole notion of being excluded in that way was very difficult for them because they were used to having everything. Now, here we have the rise of the far right. This strikes me as similar, and I think I mentioned this upstairs, to a man who who engages in domestic violence, and he slaps his girlfriend, he slaps his wife, he beats her up, and then he says, "She made me do it. If she had stayed in her place and made me happy the way she's supposed to, I wouldn't have hit her." So it almost sounds like these folk that you're describing are disturbed that they are finally getting slapped around because for some reason, black people didn't stay in their place and challenged somebody so much. They were so visible with their challenge that those on the right became much more upset about the direction that their country or community was going and lashed out. The us against them phenomenon is fascism. So it's the black people who are kicked around in this situation. This is pretty much, it's worse, but it's not a new phenomenon. But for others who are used to thinking of themselves as helping the downtrodden, this could be very upsetting and surprising. Whether that group is the left, or in the US, if that group would be the sympathetic feminists. Sometimes they have a hard time with black women organizing individually. And that does, collectively, separately, independently. That does not mean independent organization is go away, I don't ever want to talk with you again. But it's similar to that class I described. Sometimes it's the time for we all talk together, and other times it's the time for a caucus, where we talk to one another.
Professor, eu queria introduzir o debate ambiental na nossa conversa. O Brasil tem convivido com alguns graves desastres naturais. Nesse momento, estamos com 9 estados do Nordeste, 77 cidades e 187 praias tomadas por manchas de petróleo, de óleo, que ninguém sabe de onde veio. Mas não é só isso, nós temos tido problemas graves com enchentes, com excesso de chuvas, com seca, condições habitacionais que se relacionam com níveis de pobreza multidimensional, por exemplo, habitação sem qualidade, construção precária, sem saneamento básico, sem coleta de lixo. A própria condição de pobreza e miséria que aumentou nas periferias, nas comunidades indígenas e ribeirinhas e quilombolas. A minha pergunta é em que medida esse debate da agenda ambiental ele é afetado pela interseccionalidade. sempre parece que as populações pobres, negras e de baixa renda são as mais afetadas e as menos ou as mais desprotegidas nesse debate ambiental. Eu gostaria muito de ouvir uma reflexão sua em relação à interseccionalidade e meio ambiente.
Oh, this is so much the question of now. And I'm almost there with the kind of analysis I think we need. Because I think this is really the core intersectional issue where everyone can see the connections between all of these categories. Because the threat is so general. All of the things that you've described connect together with racism that is about discriminating against people, poverty, which is created by that kind of exploitation that you described, the hoarding of resources. That's what a lot of land is. We're going to hoard everything and keep it for ourselves. So, but what has happened up until now, and the vulnerable populations of the world in terms of climate change, who is positioned to have their houses gone? Who is positioned to have extreme weather and wildfires and earthquakes and all of that? This is something that doesn't fall evenly on everybody, but affects everybody in some way. So it strikes me as that it is here already. But when it comes to intersectionality, it is the next big issue that cries out for an intersectional analysis. Because each of the groups that has been involved in advocacy for some population, for example, in the US, there has been a long environmental justice movement among people of color around the placement of housing, highways, lead. The water situation in Flint, Michigan would be a very good, contemporary example. Newark with water, all of those issues. And that movement has been framed pretty much through racism. But the recognition that that is a part of a global framework and that we need better theoretical tools like intersectionality, which is going to show the connections of these systems and how they affect people and how those connections should shape the politics. Now, Black women most likely will be leaders in that movement because of being disproportionately affected by these issues of housing, weather, children with asthma. This is all connected in terms of the health of child well-being, mother's well-being, all of that. So I think what I would like to see happen is the existing groups who in the past might have looked with suspicion at one another, because one was a gender group and one was a racial group and one was doing class politics. There would be a way to develop a collective agenda under the umbrella of addressing that big issue of the environment. And because it will not go away, this is not a here today, gone tomorrow issue. This is the potential for a long-term coalitional politics. And that's the kind of politics that intersectionality points us toward. It breaks my heart that I could not get that into the book, the revision of a book that we just did. We just couldn't think that hard, that fast. But that's the question. Thank you.
Tá bom. Diz que, infelizmente, a última pergunta, a gente está com pouco tempo. Na sequência tem o Islã. Mas a Patrícia vai assinar os livros e tudo mais daqui a pouco. Então, vou fazer minha última pergunta. Teria muitas perguntas, assim, porque é uma oportunidade, né?
I'd like to say one more thing. Could you show us how to say thank you, obrigada? Can you say obrigada? What is it? Obrigada? Could you say that to her? Obrigada, and all of the people who have been also translating. All right. Obrigada. Finish? I wanted to make sure I didn't forget to do that, because I always forget.
Bom, eu vou fazer minha última então sobre... Existem... The last one. Última. E tudo bem. Tudo bem. Ela pensou que tinha acabado. Sobre a perspectiva racial, né? A gente tem muitos debates em que noções como não racial, não racial, a-racial e raça é um conceito inventado. Acho que tem um filme que é o I'm Not Your Negro, onde o James Baldwin resume isso muito didaticamente. Ele diz, branco é uma metáfora para o poder e negro é tudo aquilo que não é branco. Né? Resume, não é uma questão pessoal, você ser branco, não é uma questão... Ser branco representa uma categoria social que né, tem muitas coisas antes de você. Queria perguntar para a senhora, vendo, né, e na perspectiva, a gente leu a Chile, vê aquele futuro onde a raça não vai ser mais uma questão, mas hoje em dia é muito forte, ainda mais no Brasil. Se a senhora vê em quanto tempo essa conciliação, porque olhando, a gente olha e fala assim, haverá conciliação? É possível a conciliação? A gente vai conseguir superar isso? A senhora acha que é possível? E quanto tempo? E isso, porque olhando, eu já fui mais otimista. Hoje eu olho e falo, caramba, não, do jeito que caminhamos não vai ser possível. A senhora acha que é possível a superação disso que a gente está vivendo ou a reconciliação?
There's a difference to me between race as a social category and it's socially constructed, and a politics that says the way to make racism go away is to pretend there's no race. Now, we've tried that. That does not work, all right? The whole notion of abandoning hope prematurely. And this is a question I have to think about, because I've seen the long arc of things that were bad, and they got better, then they got a little worse, then they stayed the same, then they got worse. And I know it's possible for it to get better based on what we do today. And that's the whole notion of what we do that we leave for young people. Do we want young people to remember us as the timid group that gave up too early, so they're arguing with us? Or do we want them to remember us like Suele Cañero, somebody who didn't do that and who left something that could be carried forward, even though it was not going to be finished in her life? When you think about the world that way, as one of intergenerational struggle to breathe life into something that is good and worthwhile, there's absolutely nothing wrong with aspiring to live in a world without racism. But there's a difference between having hope for that, if not for yourself, for your children, a future generation, and assuming it is impossible, and how that then affects your everyday thinking and your own horizon. And you then become a problem to other people. So I think one thing that lies at the heart of Black feminism that I don't write about as much in this book, but that's definitely there, is that hope is at the center of our politics. Just as this first question, I was my mother's hope for the dreams that she could not live. She had dreams that I'm living a life she couldn't imagine, is what I'm saying. So just because we can't imagine things does not mean that they're not possible. And there are things I cannot imagine, but I can hope for, and I can look for. It's kind of you. who are here today, you're the ones who are laying the foundation for the future. So you don't want to be someone else's problem. You want to be their inspiration. Okay? Okay. Now, are we really done, or is there another question? After I've embarrassed myself.
Barulho para Patricia Hill Collins! Desculpa, Ana Maria! Vai barulho aí, faz favor! Vai de pé, todo mundo, faz favor!